There was an inquiry that was going on during the Biden administration into whether or not we should remove the Medal of Honor for those who fought at the Battle of Wounded Knee. Most people, for example, if you try to look this up on Wikipedia, it will not say Battle of Wounded Knee. It will say the massacre at Wounded Knee. And the reason why is the massacre at Wounded Knee was an attempt to disarm some natives of the Sioux who were attempting to, engage with American soldiers on a military campaign to suppress resistance to the reservation system. And as they were turning over their rifles, the camp was searched and they found some other rifles hidden. And then, they kept trying to turn over the rifles. And eventually during that process, after what is reportedly, of course, there's no cameras, there's no video at the time, reportedly a deaf tribesman, was hesitant in giving up their rifle. They didn't want to give up their rifle. And then the rifle went off. Now, some reports say it's accidental. I wasn't there if it was accidental, but from what it sounds like, it wasn't. He aimed, fired, and shot somebody in the chest. Is that it went off, and then the U.S. soldiers started firing. And before they were done, though due to how the mass grave was disposed of, we don't know exactly how many people died, but between 150 and 300 people died. Half of them were women and children. Now, I'm going to have Pete Hegseth say how it went, and then I'm going to give you guys some of the details of what occurred as we discuss whether or not the people who did this should have medals of honor.
Under the previous administration, a review panel was convened to determine whether soldiers awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions at the Battle of Wounded Knee should keep their medals. Now, upon deliberation, that panel concluded that these brave soldiers should, in fact, rightfully keep their medals from actions in 1890. The report was concluded in October of 2024. Yet, despite this clear recommendation, former Secretary Lloyd Austin, for whatever reason, I think we know he was more interested in being politically correct than historically correct, chose not to make a final decision. Such careless inaction has allowed for their distinguished recognition to remain in limbo until now. Under my direction, we're making it clear without hesitation that the soldiers who fought in the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890 will keep their medals. And we're making it clear that they deserve those medals. This decision is now final, and their place in our nation's history is no longer up for debate. We salute their memory, we honor their service, and we will never forget what they did.
You're right, we won't forget what they did. So, this is Spotted Elk. He was, a leader, and he was there. He was at the event. He was 61 when they gunned him down. Now, the way that it worked is that these are the circumstances that led to the opening of fire, is that during the handing over of these guns, some of the people were upset about it. People join the anti-reservation, they don't like the system, and all of a sudden they have to turn over their guns, and they start doing a ghost dance. Now, if you don't know what a ghost dance is, it's a tradition in Native communities. It's a performative ceremonial dance, and more people joined into this ghost dance, which made the soldiers nervous because they didn't really know what the ghost dance meant. They're not really into necessarily all of the Native customs and understand what they're trying to communicate. Obviously, they're upset. They're not happy about that. Now, when that gun went off from that deaf tribesman, they opened fire on everybody. On everybody. Mind you, at the point that they opened fire, many of the men who were then gunned down had already given up their firearms, meaning that there was tons and tons of unarmed men, and of course, unarmed women and children, who were getting gunned down, partially because they had already given up quite a substantial amount of the firearms that were in their capacity, but also because, they were not ready for that engagement. In fact, the idea that this was a deliberate attack by the Sioux, or an attempt by the Sioux to get the jump on American soldiers, is so hard to believe when you know exactly where they were. See, they took these hundreds of people and they stuffed them into a clearing, and then they took 4 Hotchkiss guns and put them on ridges above where they were, then surrounded them with cavalry, horse-mounted cavalry, and riflemen. So when that gun went off, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Many of the women and children ran, many of the unarmed man ran, but there was no deliberation about whether this person should be shot, that person should be shot. They ran and they ran and they were chased down on horseback with saber. And the ones chasing them down on horseback and saber did not discriminate between the armed men, the unarmed men, the women, or the children, including the women and the children that were actively running away. The Hotchkiss guns that were on the clearing followed them as they ran away, tearing them to shreds. That is how roughly 50% of them were women and children. Not 50% of them were non-combatants, mind you, or 50% of them were unarmed. 50% of them were women and children. Of the percentage that were grown men, a significant portion of them were unarmed. After the massacre, and this is spotted elk, by the way. After the massacre, they took the bodies and they unceremoniously, if you look up Wounded Knee Massacre, you can probably find the picture online, where they unceremoniously take all of these bodies, they dump them into a mass grave, one after the other. Many of the bodies were naked and or stripped, of course, looted of desirables and goods and little trinkets, dumped into the mass grave, and then covered up. Now it is known as Cemetery Hill, due to the fact that it is a mass grave of Lakota. The ones that did get away, many did respond and attack in retaliation, but historians believe that the majority of American casualties, 25 American casualties, by the way, were actually caused by friendly fire in the chaos. So yes, there were Lakota that did end up killing Americans, but at the Battle of Wounded Knee, the biggest killer of Americans was Americans. Now, of course, historians disagree. Was it a majority? Was it a plurality? But they seem to agree that a significant portion of the casualties were caused by friendly fire. So if we're going to say that the Medal of Honor has honor, shouldn't we make sure that it's given to people who act honorably? I mean, some people say, oh, this is woke, this is politically correct. What we're talking about now is stuff that was getting condemned by the Indian National Congress like fucking 50 years ago. Congress, on a bipartisan basis, condemned what happened in the early 2000s during the Bush administration. This is something where, I mean, historians agree that, you know, I don't think that a child being shot in the back is necessarily of America's national security interests. And we should really ask ourselves, does somebody deserve the Medal of Honor for shooting a child in the back? That's my question. Does somebody deserve the Medal of Honor for shooting a child in the back? Now, look, I'm not saying that every single person who got the Medal of Honor there shot a child in the back, but the cavalry did not discriminate. They did not discriminate. And if we're talking 50% of the casualties are women and children, I mean, somebody had to kill them. Whether it was the guy on the Hotchkiss guns, whether it was the cavalry that chased them down after, whether it was the riflemen that opened up in the initial volley of fire. I mean, look, I hear so much about Waco. I hear so much about Ruby Ridge. I hear so much, hey, guys, you know, the feds, murdering feds coming in, destroying your freedom. Yeah, give the government your guns. And now we got Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying, we must honor American soldiers for gun grabbing and shooting children in the back. Yay! USA! 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 It's ridiculous. And the thing is, we're talking about the Medals of Honor that was awarded to the people at Wounded Knee. We're not talking about even the Medal of Honors that go to there was like 31 Medals of Honor given for the entire campaign. 17 of those, so quite a large amount of those, we're talking about a plurality here, just barely, but a plurality, were awarded at that battle. Why not, like, okay, how about the rest of the campaign? And I don't even want to get into the nuance if the rest of the campaign is deserving of the Medal of Honor. What about the rest of the campaign gets the Medal of Honor, right? And the other battles where maybe somebody fought the Sioux, head to head instead of like turned into like a little killing field. And we say, hey, that was an honorable way to fight. Here you go. Instead, we're saying not only do everybody else who participated, all those people who participated in the full campaign who got the Medal of Honor, they get to keep the Medal of Honor, but also those who participated in this massacre. Here's a question, and I know this is probably not the nicest way to ask this, but I'm just blunt, and it popped in my mind, and I imagine you guys donate when I tell what I think is the truth. Do you think if Secretary of War, which is what it's now called because we're adults, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth was, say, not born in the United States, but was, say, born in Gaza, say he found a position in a certain military administration, and then on a certain day in October, an attack took place. Like, what differentiates, mowing down men, women, and children in one area that is not deserving of awards, but is deserving of destruction, death, and terror to not only them, but to everybody who lives around them? But when you do it over here, it's deserving of honor, and they've secured their place in history as heroes. What differentiates? If you are massacring civilians, you don't deserve to be honored. If we keep the same people who battled like warriors in Iwo Jima or these other places, and we keep them on the same level as wounded. Back then, let's not even be light about this. They would give the Medal of Honor out like a trinket. And I'm not saying that everyone had the Medal of Honor, but the Medal of Honor right now is a lot more coveted. It's much more coveted than it used to be. Back in the day, they gave it out a lot more. And if we want this to be a coveted award, if we've now decided that this is an award you get with prudence, this is an award you get because you're honorable, it's the Medal of Honor, it's the most well-known military decoration you can get, shouldn't we work to preserve it as a righteous institution, as a righteous award that if somebody sees it on their chest, their eyes go wide and they bow they tip their hat or they salute or they like, damn, man, you're a hero. Look, I know we're not getting any of these Wounded Knee veterans coming to Congress to testify about how they deserve to get their medal. So who exactly are we even protecting? Who are we protecting by protecting these people's honor? It'd be one thing to have an inquiry and look, let's have a full description of what happened. We can talk about whether that one blind tribesman acted with prudence when he accidentally fired off his rifle. If you want to break that down, whatever, you're not going to convince me that somebody who ran down children on horseback deserves anything with the word honor in it. Also, did you guys see this gem that has been making the rounds? From Kristi Noem on the Battle of Wounded Knee, that Pete Hegseth, says we need to keep the Medal of Honors to the people who did it.
In the critical race theory bill, it talks about certain divisive topics, and one of the little subsections says there shouldn't be any topic that a student induces anguish in a student. And yet, when we learn about Wounded Knee, shouldn't a student feel a little bit of anguish about that terrible chapter in American history?
Absolutely. Wounded Knee was horrific, and our students should absolutely learn about the atrocities that happened there. In fact, I've been working with that tribe for years to try to get a true memorial built there that attracts people people from around the world to come to Wounded Knee and learn about the terrible things that have happened there. So I'm hopeful at some point the tribe will come to the table and work with me to do that, because I think that's something the state could partner with them.
Well, isn't that unfortunate that that clip exists? And then she shot a dog. Okay, sorry.